I am making this video to demonstrate my approach to teaching triplets, 8th note triplets and 16th note triplets. This video by no means is to discredit or bash no one. This is simply my approach and my standards. Now, counting systems. When teaching students, I have established by the time they have reached this page, counting systems, which would be quarter note count, 8th note count, 16th note count, 16th note triplet count, and odd groupings. Now, the standard that I've come across mostly, people use to count 8th note triplets as one triplet, which is fine. If that works for you, use that. I don't really agree with that because I have other things I use a triplet for. I count a triplet two ways. An 8th note triplet is counted to me as 1 and the, 2 and the, 3 and the, 4 and the. I sometimes use a different count for a triplet. I count a triplet as, for subdivisional reasons, when I'm doing polyrhythms, example 3 against 2, 3 against 4, 3 against 5. I count the 8th note triplet as 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now, I'm going to display what I would teach my student how to approach this page, or perhaps this just the first couple of lines. Now, if you count triplet as 1 triplet, 2 triplet, it works. The reason why I count 1 and the, 2 and the, it's easier for me to develop a jazz pattern, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. If you feel more comfortable using 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 1, that's fine. Like I said, it doesn't really work for me. I don't agree with that, but it works and it seems to be some sort of standard, and I'm not disputing it. I'm just going to display my approach. I've come across a lot of different students and a lot of different people who have a few different ways to count the triplet that I haven't mentioned. Some would count it 1 ta ta. I have no idea where that comes from, but that just seems not to work for me. Also, the video I posted, there was a demonstration of a few of these lines, and a triplet was being counted as 1 e da. Well, I guess that's not wrong, but it doesn't really work because it gets confusing. It confuses the student. When he gets involved with a 2/16 and an 1/8, he is going 1 e and the way the other video was presented was 1 e da. Now, that seems to be very, very confusing to the new student or to the student who wants to tweak their reading abilities. My approach would not be on line 1, 1 e da. It would be 1 and the. Now, I have my students count instead of just the quarter note to keep the space equal or the time stronger. I have them count a continuous triplet. For example, 1 and the, 2 and the, 3 and the, 4 and the, 1 and the, 2 and the, 3 and the, 4 and the. I see very confusion coming if I go 1 e da 2, 3, 4. That's fine I guess to a certain degree or certain point. Most kids, 12, 13, have had some sort of school system instruction from their bandmaster. Their bandmaster may have majored and has a master's degree in music from some college and has a certificate to teach in public schools. Now, that teacher is perhaps his major instrument was trumpet or clarinet or uh, saxophone. And their approach to teaching someone to read this rhythm, the drummer, is a musical approach, which is not bad, because they more or less, instead of count, is hum, which eventually you will. But this is the basic mechanics of understanding an eighth note triplet in this situation, an eighth note triplet and 3/4 notes. I have my students count constant 1 and the 2 and the 3 and the 4 and the. They keep the space equal to the quarter note. Eventually, at a faster tempo, you kind of, you're counting subconsciously somewhere, but you're keeping the groove or the tempo in time. You have a solid pulse. Example, if I'm counting 1, excuse me, let me point it out. 1 and the 2 and the 3 and the 4 and the 1 and the 2 and the 3 and the 4 and the. Now they're counting like this in the beginning, and they're using a metronome in a few different ways. They'll set the metronome either to a quarter note or each tick as a count. Now, eventually, as you get faster, it's difficult to count 1 and the 2 and the 3 and the 4 and the 1 and the 2 and the 3 and the 4 and the, yes, you'll feel the pulse because of your basic foundation of training this way. I will, for example, take the triplet 1 and the 2 and the 3 and the 4 and the. Now I'm going to use the metronome for a second just to demonstrate. Hold on. The metronome is set at 60. It's going to be set at 60. Now, that's my pulse for the quarter note. Now you have somebody who's not familiar with this particular system. I have him count every tick. 1 and the 2. For example, 1 and the 2 and the 3 and the 4 and the. Now that's pretty, well, it is very basic. But it gives the student a sense of timing, a strong sense of timing. The student would go through it that way until he feels the quarter note. That would be the next step. And let me put the metronome perhaps on 100. Now, if I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and the 2 and the 3 and the 4 and the 1 and the 2 and the 3 and the 4 and the, or 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, it does make sense. However, if I'm counting 1 and 2, I can't even count that. 1 and the 2, 3, 4. 1 and the 2, 3, 4. That sounds like some sort of language from Mars. I've never heard that term before. The first time I've come across that was in the video that I posted. Now, I give the student, by this time, if he's out of tempo like this, he should feel the triplet. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and the 2, 3, 4. 1 and the 2, 3, 4. 1 and the 2, 3, 4. To count that fast, 1 EN, 1 EN, 2 EN, is going to get confusing between 2 16ths and an eighth. 1 E and the 2 E and the 3 E and the 4 E and. It's very, very confusing, and I don't agree with it. I totally don't. My way of counting a triplet And it has worked for me, and it works for my students, and it's very helpful doing polyrhythms is two ways. One and two and three and four and or 1 2 3 1 2 3 1. Here you go. 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3. Now the reason, like I said, is count that is because I'll do a polyrhythm. I will play constant triplets, say, with my left hand, and go 1 2 3 1 2 3 1, and play the line down with my right. 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3. And if I was to play eighth notes against the triplet, I have to count 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 and 3 1 2 and 3 1 2 and 3 1 2 and 3. My point being, if I have eighth note triplets for 2 downbeats and a grouping of 4 sixteenths for the next 2 downbeats, it would get very confusing. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and can't buy that. Very confusing. Things are so confusing right at the moment with all this YouTube instructional thing, and people just add more confusion into the mix. It's hard work to separate the brain, to play all these polyrhythms, to play the hands and the feet and the count, and to make it musical without adding 1 E dot 2 E dot. That sounds, again, like some language from Mars. I hope I've expressed myself, and again, like I said, this is not to discredit no one, nor is it to bash anyone. This is my approach to teaching triplets.